in the early days of the series, when I was trying to find this character and I was really working at it, then of course I got wrapped up in him to the extent that...
Dan Blocker was more than just a television icon. He was a gentle giant whose presence on screen masked a deeply thoughtful and private man.
Any two-legged one either, for that matter.
I don't know. I remember one little two-legged animal didn't weigh an ounce over 100 pounds, with red hair and all. She didn't give me nothing but trouble.
Well, I wasn't thinking of any girl, son.
How does someone so strong and grounded suddenly vanish at the height of their fame? Imagine building a beloved life only to have it shattered without warning. Behind the scenes of his success, Dan and his wife made quiet choices that reflected their values, choosing privacy over publicity. But even the most carefully guarded lives can encounter tragedy, and the final chapter of Dan's story would leave millions stunned. Sudden decline and hospitalization. At the height of the 12th season of Bonanza, in 1972, something began to change in Dan Blocker's life. Friends and colleagues noticed a new weariness in the man who had always seemed indestructible. He appeared weaker, drained, and far less energetic than usual. While long filming hours could explain some fatigue, it soon became clear that something more serious was unfolding beneath the surface. After experiencing ongoing pain, Dan sought medical attention and was diagnosed with gallstones. Doctors recommended a gallbladder removal known as a cholecystectomy. The surgery was considered routine and low risk, performed on millions of patients each year. For someone who had endured wartime service and years of physically demanding work, this seemed like a small obstacle. Everyone expected he would recover quickly and return to complete the final episodes of Bonanza. At first, the operation appeared successful. Dan felt relieved, believing the discomfort that had plagued him for years was finally gone. He was sent home and looked forward to resuming normal life. But within hours, his condition suddenly deteriorated. The shift was abrupt and terrifying. What had seemed like a simple recovery turned into a medical emergency. Dan became dizzy and complained of intense pain, alarming his wife, Dolphia. She rushed him back to the hospital, sensing something was terribly wrong. Despite urgent treatment, doctors were unable to stop the rapid decline. Dan Blocker died that same day from a pulmonary embolism caused by a blood clot that traveled to his lungs and blocked a major artery. He was only 43 when he died. The strength he projected to the world made the tenderness of his final moments all the more heartbreaking. The person he had become through his family life, his television work, and his youth seemed to guarantee him a long future. His existence came to an abrupt end, which brought about his death without any advance notice or final goodbyes. His family received the first emotional blow, which gradually expanded to affect more people. His wife lost her partner, and his children lost their father, while the Bonanza cast lost a close friend. The two co-stars, Michael Landon and Lorne Greene, felt deep emotional pain, according to reports. The sudden disappearance of a well-known person led millions of viewers to experience difficulty understanding his departure from the public eye. Dolphia found herself facing a decision that seemed impossible to reach. She could have remained in the public eye as the grieving widow of a famous man. She chose to live privately because she wanted to achieve two things. First, she wanted to protect her family, and second, she wanted to keep their dignity intact. The tragedy became one of Hollywood's most hidden losses because she chose to maintain her silence. The medical team considered the operation to be a basic procedure, which initiated a series of activities that would result in permanent changes. The death of Dan Blocker showed that people who seem strong at first can suddenly face dangerous circumstances. His death created an unfilled gap, which ended a life that had been characterized by human warmth, modesty, and inner strength. Transitioning from that final devastating moment, it's impossible to understand the impact without first knowing where his journey began. His roots, his early years, and how he grew into the man the world came to love. Early life and formative years. Dan Blocker's life started in DeKalb, Texas, with an entrance as striking as his future presence. Weighing an astonishing 14 pounds, he still holds the record as the largest baby born in Bowie County. This beginning set the tone for a life marked by extraordinary physical size, something that defined much of who he was. From the start, there was a story that people couldn't help but share. His parents, Aura Shack Blocker and Mary Arizona Blocker, moved the family when Dan was young to the small town of O'Donnell, Texas. His father had been a farmer, but lost everything during the Great Depression, and then opened a grocery store to scrape a new livelihood together. The family lived in rooms behind the shop, and Dan was always ready to help. His immense size was already causing some unintended consequences. He would often accidentally break items in the store, prompting his father to jokingly say he should pay customers for hiring Dan. O'Donnell was a tiny place with just about 800 residents surrounded by expansive ranch land. On Saturday nights, when community entertainment was scarce, Dan often became the main event. Challenge after challenge, he faced anyone brave enough to test their strength. Remarkably, Blocker said he never lost a fight. His physical confidence wasn't empty boasting. Even as a teenager, Dan weighed around 275 pounds and stood well over 6 feet tall. His strength and size shaped much of his early life, but a twist of fate introduced him to a new passion. At 13, he joined the Texas Military Institute, where he excelled as a linebacker on the football team. This success earned him a scholarship to Sul Ross State University, where he initially planned to study English and continue playing football. Yet his course changed unexpectedly, steering him toward a different dream. The Sul Ross State Drama Club required assistants to transport their heavy stage equipment. Dan's exceptional body size made him the ideal candidate for carrying out the mission. The people around him recommended that he perform a small part of Teddy Brewster for the show Arsenic and Old Lace. The stage performance provided him with his first theatrical experience, which made a strong impression on him. The act of performing, which created an audience bond with Dan Blocker, became his lifelong passion. He began his theater studies, which resulted in his future achievements. Dan decided to pursue his new interests instead of joining the professional football leagues after he completed his degree. He spent his summers working at summer stock theaters and repertory theaters to develop his acting abilities. The start of his successful career began with his first Broadway appearance in King Lear, which led to his legendary success. Life created obstacles that prevented him from following a simple path to success. Dan Blocker began his path to success when he received combat training after the United States Army drafted him during the Korean War. The chapter would develop him through multiple challenges that exceeded his abilities as an actor and football player. His early years developed the character traits that enabled him to serve in both military combat and his public life as a celebrity. People need to understand his character development because his life path opened from his Texas hometown to the Korean War battlefields, which he experienced during his military service. The core of his character developed through these primary years of life, which produced his three main features. Dan's transition from his teenage years into military service developed his essential character traits, which prepared him to face upcoming challenges that required him to show both courage and leadership skills and maintain his unchanging determination. That resolve became clear during his time in uniform, where the lessons of his past met the harsh realities of war. Military service and personal discipline. Dan Blocker entered the military in late 1950, joining the United States Army amid the Korean War. He began training at Fort Polk, Louisiana, where the grueling routine was unlike anything he had experienced. After basic training, he spent 9 months stationed in Sapporo, Japan, sharpening skills that would serve him in the conflict ahead. From there, he was sent to Korea, assigned to Company F, Battalion 179 of the 45th Infantry Division. His time on the front lines tested every ounce of his physical strength and mental toughness. The locations where his unit fought, places like Outpost Erie, Old Baldy, and Pork Chop Hill, are etched in the history of the Korean War for their intensity. Dan quickly rose to the rank of sergeant, showing natural leadership among the men under his command. His ability to command respect while remaining friendly made him a standout figure. One harrowing patrol on May 25th found Dan and his unit ambushed deep behind enemy lines. Outnumbered and pinned down, they faced an unrelenting communist attack. When a fellow soldier was wounded and trapped, Dan held his ground for over 4 hours, returning fire against machine guns, mortars, and small arms. His bravery in the face of danger kept the enemy at bay, even though the trapped soldier tragically did not survive. This period was not just about physical endurance. It was a test of spirit and character. After more than 200 days on the front lines, Dan's division was pulled back in July, but not without cost. He was hospitalized for wounds sustained in combat and his actions earned him respect and recognition for saving the lives of those around him. Fellow soldiers remembered him as athletic, friendly, and a natural leader with a booming presence. One former comrade spoke of Dan crushing a beer can between two fingers while still keeping an eye on every man in the squad. That quiet toughness reflected a man who could balance strength with compassion, a balance that would later define his acting roles. His military experience left a lasting mark on his worldview, particularly his aversion to guns, despite acting in westerns filled with shootouts. Returning home in 1952, Dan carried the weight of his service, but remained focused on the future. He married Dolphia Parker that same year, building a family, and returning to college to earn a master's degree in dramatic arts. The discipline and leadership honed in the military clearly influenced both his personal life and his evolving career path. The lessons Dan learned in Korea helped shape the integrity and determination he would bring to every role, every family moment, and ultimately to confronting the unforeseen tragedies that lay ahead. His military service was a pivotal chapter, one that deepened the man behind the legend. Understanding this part of Dan's life is crucial to grasping the contrast between the gentle giant on screen and the complex, deeply principled person he was off camera. This foundation of strength and care carried him into the world of acting, where his next transformation awaited. The strength Dan gained from his military service blended with his early life experiences, setting the stage for a dramatic shift from soldier to actor. And that journey would soon lead him to the role that made him a household name. Transition to acting and breakthrough. After returning from military service, Dan Blocker took a deliberate step into a new chapter of his life. With a master's degree in dramatic arts under his belt and a growing family to support, he initially chose teaching as his main profession. He taught high school English and drama in Sonora, Texas, and later 6th grade in New Mexico. Teaching grounded him and provided stability, but the pull of the stage and screen remained strong. In the mid-1950s, Dan began auditioning for television roles, using acting to supplement his income. At a time when westerns dominated television, his towering frame and commanding presence made him a natural fit. He landed a series of small roles in popular shows such as Gunsmoke, Rifleman, Have Gun Will Travel, and Maverick. These parts allowed him to grow more comfortable in front of the camera and develop his skills. One notable early opportunity almost became something much bigger. Director Stanley Kubrick considered Dan for a role in Dr. Strangelove after Peter Sellers dropped out. Unfortunately, Dan's agent declined the script, and the role went to Slim Pickens instead. This missed chance might have changed the trajectory of his career, but Blocker remained focused on steady growth rather than sudden stardom. In 1957, Dan appeared in a Three Stooges short called Outer Space Jitters, and he also took a small part as a bartender in Sheriff of Cochise. These were humble beginnings, but important for building his resume. Slowly but surely, his work started to come steadily, providing him a foothold in the television industry that was hungry for strong, reliable character actors. Then came a crucial moment. A short-lived series called Cimarron City cast him in a regular role. Though the show didn't last long, its cancellation turned out to be serendipitous. Freed from previous obligations, Dan was available when the opportunity of a lifetime arrived. Producer David Dortich selected him to play Eric Hoss Cartwright on Bonanza, a role that would come to define his life. The doctoral studies of Dan were interrupted when he dedicated himself completely to his role as Hoss. The Western show Bonanza transformed into a family drama, which used the vast Old West landscapes as its backdrop. Hoss served as the show's emotional foundation, while Little Joe acted as the charming lead who captured everyone's attention. His character displayed gentle shyness and a kind-hearted nature, which created warm and deep connections with the audience throughout the show. The initial period of the Bonanza faced numerous challenges to its existence. The show failed to attract viewers because it competed against Perry Mason, who aired his show on Saturday nights. The show faced cancellation after its first 13 episodes because of high production costs and poor audience response. NBC decided to support the show by scheduling it on Sunday evenings, which helped it reach a large viewership. Bonanza gained instant recognition when Chevrolet signed their major sponsorship agreement with the show. The show developed into one of the most popular television series, which continued for 13 seasons. Dan Blocker became a popular character to audiences through his role as Hoss, which made him a famous person who represented goodness throughout American television. His path to fame developed slowly until he became successful through his genuine nature instead of using showy behaviors common among celebrities. Dan dedicated himself to his work, which created the character Hoss Cartwright, who embodies kindness and loyalty, thus securing his role in television history. While his career was soaring, the man behind the character remained quietly determined to stay true to his roots and personal values, an attribute that would color both his off-screen life and the roles he embraced. The man behind Hoss Cartwright. Behind the gentle giant of Hoss Cartwright lay a man of surprising complexity and depth. Dan Blocker was nothing like the slow-witted, simple ranch hand he portrayed. He was highly educated, holding a master's degree in theater, and he had a natural intellectual curiosity. Before acting took precedence, he dedicated himself to teaching and was deeply thoughtful about the world around him. Dan was a committed Free Methodist and held strong political beliefs that leaned toward the progressive side. Unlike his on-screen persona, he supported liberal causes and even backed Eugene McCarthy in his presidential campaign. This contrast between his real-life views and his character revealed the layers beneath the gentle exterior that viewers adored each week. His compassion was genuine and rooted in personal values rather than performance. Dan believed fervently in kindness, fairness, and standing up for what was right. These qualities were the foundation of how he brought Hoss to life. The character never felt manipulative or calculated. What audiences saw was an honest reflection of the man himself. During Bonanza's early seasons, Dan admitted that the lines between himself and Hoss blurred. He spent so much time immersed in the character's world that distinguishing his own identity from Hoss's became challenging. It took several years before he could fully separate the two, stepping into the role each day and leaving it behind at night. Despite the differences, Hoss Cartwright lived within Dan as an emotional compass. He was guided by the philosophy of 18th-century Quaker missionary Stephen Grellet: "If there is kindness to be shown or good to be done, it should be done now because we only pass this way once." Every awkward apology, gesture of loyalty, and moment of humor sprang from that belief. Off-camera, Dan was known for his toughness tempered with warmth. During one grueling filming session, he was thrown violently from a horse and fractured his collarbone. Instead of seeking immediate hospital care, he astonishingly set the bone himself, climbed back on the horse, and finished the scene. It was a testament to his grit and commitment. Dan's sudden interest to learn about guns through his work on Bonanza, which featured numerous gunfights, created an unexpected situation. The Korean War experience, which he went through, established his strong opposition to guns. He banned guns from his home because he wanted his kids to stay away from both hunting and weapon handling. Dan preferred to avoid violent conflicts, while Hoss sometimes took out his handgun from its holster. Dan discovered family relationships at Bonanza that extended beyond his work obligations. He developed a close friendship with Michael Landon and Lorne Green. The two friends maintained a deep friendship that developed through their work because they spent time together after finishing their filming schedule. Dan Blocker displayed opposing traits through his combination of tall stature and kind personality, his behavior as a violent soldier, and his rejection of fame as a public figure. The understanding of his complex nature allows people to see the authentic person who created the beloved character while showing his genuine human qualities through all his performances. From here, the story moves toward how Dan and his wife built a life away from the Hollywood glare, carving out a haven of privacy and family focus amid growing fame. Family life and privacy. Despite being one of television's most recognizable faces, Dan Blocker and his wife, Dolphia, lived a remarkably grounded and private life. Rather than embracing Hollywood glamour, they settled into a modest 4-bedroom home in Northridge, a quiet suburb about 20 miles from Paramount Studios. Their house was comfortable but practical, reflecting values rooted in simplicity rather than celebrity excess. For Dan, acting was meaningful work, but it never defined who he was. This mindset shaped how the family lived every day. While Dan's role as Hoss Cartwright brought massive public attention, he was uneasy with fame's intrusion. He often seemed confused that audiences felt such a deep attachment to a fictional character rather than the real person behind it. Being stopped constantly for autographs or touched by strangers made him uncomfortable, and he deeply valued personal space. Though he appreciated his fans, he struggled with the loss of privacy that came with success. Protecting their 4 children from the effects of celebrity was a top priority. Even simple outings like taking them for ice cream could turn into public scenes with people staring, pointing, or interrupting. These moments highlighted the tension between Dan's public image and his desire for an ordinary family life. He wanted his children to feel normal, not like extensions of his fame. The television showed a different Dan, which showed his actual personality at home. His personality displayed 3 main traits, which made him behave like a child. He used his body size to make people laugh, instead of scaring them. After work finished at the studio, he ran into his house to start racing his sons towards their electric racetrack while playfully fighting to win the race. The man showed himself as someone who maintained his boyhood excitement throughout his life. The Blocker family combined their capacity for deep thinking with their ability to create joyfulness. They enjoyed meaningful conversations, but also believed joy was essential. Their lifestyle remained modest by Hollywood standards. Their family owned 2 vehicles, which included a Cadillac that Dolphia drove and a Corvette Stingray that Dan drove. Their home provided a basic space where family members could gather together. Dan's social connections showed his personal values. Dan chose to spend time with his old friends and former teachers, and people who knew him before he became famous, rather than associating with industry experts. These friendships helped him stay grounded, while he received relief from the shallow aspects of Hollywood. Dan and Dolphia preferred to spend their time together at home or intimate get-togethers with trusted friends, instead of attending major celebrity events. Dan maintained his original self throughout his entire life. Dan created a life that revolved around his dedication to family, his genuine self, and his need for personal space, instead of creating a celebrity image. Dolphia completely supported this vision. Together, they rejected tabloid media and resisted Hollywood's demands for public appearances. The 2 maintained their private lifestyle throughout Dan's increasing popularity. The couple chose to express their feelings through private relationships, while they maintained their right to control their public image. Dan's yearning for a peaceful life eventually led to a significant choice that would deepen their separation from Hollywood's glare and bring them closer to the ideal they had long sought. The move to Switzerland. In search of peace and anonymity, Dan Blocker and his family made a remarkable decision in the early 1970s to relocate to Lugano, Switzerland, a picturesque town nestled among lakes and mountains in southern Switzerland. Dan's fascination with the area was sparked years earlier by a National Geographic feature showcasing the region's stunning natural beauty and charming European towns. After visiting with Dolphia and their children, they felt an immediate connection, sensing Lugano as a true home away from the relentless attention of American fame. This move was not motivated by financial incentives or tax schemes, as some speculated. In fact, living abroad brought its own complexities, including the challenges and costs associated with dual citizenship. Dan had already become a millionaire from his work on Bonanza, so money was never the driving force. Instead, the family sought something priceless. A quiet life, where Dan could walk down the street without being recognized or interrupted. Lugano offered that refuge. Unlike in the United States, Bonanza was broadcast in German on Swiss TV, but Italian was the dominant language in Lugano, meaning few locals were familiar with the show or its characters. For the first time, Dan was just Dan, not Hoss Cartwright. This anonymity gave him the freedom to reclaim a sense of normalcy and privacy that had long eluded him. The town's serene streets, fresh mountain air, and relaxed pace of life were a stark contrast to the hustle of Hollywood. Here, the family could enjoy simple pleasures without crowds or paparazzi. This new environment also allowed the Blocker children to attend an American school, where they could learn new languages and expand their horizons amid a peaceful, nurturing setting. Despite relocating overseas, Dan remained professionally committed to Bonanza. He continued filming the series and traveled regularly to the United States for work. But whenever possible, he returned to Switzerland to be with his family, embracing the balance between career and cherished personal time. The move reflected a deep desire for preservation rather than escape. It was a conscious choice to protect Dan's family from the sometimes harsh realities of celebrity, to nurture their privacy, and to live life on their own terms. This step was in harmony with the quiet values Dan and Dolphia had upheld throughout their years together. Though rumors swirled about financial motives or secret deals fueling the move, Dan dismissed those claims without much comment. His focus remained on the peace that Switzerland offered, a peace he had rarely experienced in America. It was a bold step that showed how much he prized a grounded, loving family life over fame or fortune. Settling in Lugano gave Dan the space to breathe, reflect, and be present for his wife and children in a way that Hollywood rarely allowed. It was a chapter marked by simplicity and sincere contentment, far from the glamorous yet intrusive world of television stardom. This peaceful haven would ultimately form the backdrop for their final years together, a peaceful contrast to the sudden tragedy that would later unfold, forever marking their story with profound poignancy. As Dan Blocker embraced this quieter life in Switzerland, the unforeseen events that would bring his story to its tragic conclusion quietly approached, shadows falling over a man who had found so much solace far from the spotlight. Life after Dan. The sudden death of Dan Blocker left his wife, Dolphia, facing a life-altering choice. She could have stepped into the public spotlight as the grieving widow of a beloved star. Instead, she chose to quietly step away from fame altogether. Her refusal to participate in the media frenzy surrounding Dan's death created one of Hollywood's most understated stories, one defined by privacy, dignity, and a fierce commitment to family. Dolphia devoted herself to protecting their 4 children and preserving Dan's memory without turning it into a spectacle. She avoided interviews, declined public appearances, and never attempted to benefit from her husband's legacy. This was not about hiding, but about honoring the values they shared: humility, peace, and keeping family life sacred. Her choice ensured that their story remained personal, far from sensational headlines and public intrusion. To the outside world, Dolphia became something of a mystery. Because she remained so private, little is known about her later years beyond her devotion to her children and grandchildren. This quiet life was exactly what she wanted, a stark contrast to the fame that had surrounded Dan. While he had lived in the public eye, Dolphia chose a path defined by calm and distance from celebrity culture. Her silence showed her deep sorrow because it showed her intense feelings of grief. The dignity of the man who had been admired by millions remained protected by Dolphia, who carried her heartbreak in private. She remained faithful to their shared life by choosing not to marry another man. The decision she made showed her enduring love, because she possessed emotional strength, which made her stay with him. She brought up their children with Dan's fundamental values during the years that followed. She kept them away from public view, which enabled the family to recover without facing external challenges. Dolphia kept their home life private from public attention, which had made Dan famous as Hoss Cartwright. Her death occurred with quietness that matched her later life through her silent way of living. Dolphia left behind children and grandchildren who carried forward the values she and Dan shared. The way she handled her loss with elegance became a strong element of their family heritage. The story of Dan and Dolphia Blocker shows that every public personality has a family that suffers in silence. The research disproves the common beliefs about celebrity, which show that people do not need to suffer public tragedy to achieve recognition. Dan Blocker's life was a journey of strength, compassion, and quiet dignity, matched by Dolphia's unwavering commitment to family privacy after his sudden passing. Their story reminds us that behind fame lie real people and real struggles. If you found this story compelling, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into the lives of iconic figures. And stay with us for the next story now appearing on your screen.